VK3 Alpha Mike Lima. That's a little better. Okay. Well, we've been away for 2 days. My wife and I spent a couple of nights, of all places, in Chadstone Hotel, only about 4 kilometres away, but with a special cut rate holiday, we decided to do a bit of serious retail therapy, particularly for Prue. So on the first night away, we managed to speak to Peter, 3ACZ, with the little Baofeng handheld from the 11th floor of Chadstone Hotel. And so those little Baofengs, which we use here for receiving for crossband, are pretty damn good. Anyway, for the next 30 minutes, as is my practice, we'll play some pre-recorded material tonight with a kind of an astronomical tinge to them, because I know Clint, 3K3 CSM, I think he is, who's a member of the Victorian Astronomical Society, listens in quite often. H.G. Wells, the writer of The War of the Worlds, died in 1946, but about 8 years before he died, Orson Welles, a very young playwright, author, performer, theatrical director, produced a sensational radio adaptation of War of the Worlds, which, when played on New York radio, set people into a panic as to there being a real invasion by aliens. Well, as a result of that, the next visit that H.G. Wells made to USA in 1940, just before USA entered the Second World War, Orson Welles met H.G. Wells in a radio studio in New York, and that meeting was recorded. And here it is.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Charles C. Shaw speaking. KTSA is honored this evening by the presence in our studios of 2 great men, the Honorable H.G. Wells, world-famous British historian, author, and student of world affairs, and Mr. Orson Welles, the genius of stage, screen, and radio. This is the first time that Mr. H.G. Wells and Mr. Orson Welles have appeared together. In fact, they met for the first time only yesterday here in San Antonio. But this is not the first time that their names have been linked. 2 years ago, Mr. Orson Welles adapted Mr. H.G. Wells' book, War of the Worlds, for radio purposes. And you know the rest. Revising the story somewhat, Mr. Orson Welles depicted an invasion of the United States by men from Mars. Although he explained it numerous times during the program that it was fictitious, the country at large was frightened almost out of its wits. Men called radio stations offering to enlist against the Martians. Others were panic-stricken. The realism of the production, frightening though it was a tribute to Mr. Orson Welles' genius. And thus the name of Wells, H-G-W-E-L-L-S, and Orson, W-E-L-L-E-S, became linked. Mr. H.G. Wells, in the opinion of many, is the world's most famous man of letters. He has come to San Antonio to address the United States Brewers Association, and Mr. Orson Welles is here for a town hall forum address Wednesday. In this meeting of great minds, I feel rather inconspicuous, and the less I have to say, the better you listeners will like it. But first, could I interest you gentlemen in a discussion of Mr. Orson Welles' broadcast of Mr. H.G. Wells' book, The War of the World.
Are you turning the meeting over to us, sir?
I am, for the moment.
He's turning it over to us. Well, I've had a series of the most delightful experiences since I came to America. But the best thing that has happened so far is meeting my little namesake here, Orson. I find him the most delightful carrier. He carries my name and an extra E that I hope he'll drop sooner or later. See no sense in it. And I've known his work before he made this sensational Halloween spree. Are you sure there was such a panic in America, or wasn't it your Halloween fun?
I think that's the nicest thing that a man from England could possibly say about the men from Mars. Because Mr. Hitler made a good deal of sport of it, you know, and actually spoke of it in the great Munich speech, you know. And there were floats in Nazi parades showing.
Much else to say.
That's right. There hasn't much else to say. And it's supposed to show the corrupt condition and decadent state of affairs in democracies that the War of the Worlds went over as well as it did. I think it's very nice of Mr. Welles to say that not only I didn't mean it, but the American people didn't mean it.
That was our impression in England. We had articles about it, and people said, "Have you never heard of Halloween in America when everybody pretends to see ghosts?" Now, before we get away from this microphone, tell me about this film of yours that you've been producing. You're a producer, aren't you? You're
That's right.
art director, you're everything.
Well, Mr. Welles,
What's the film called?
it's called Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane, yes.
Citizen-
Not C-A-I-N.
No, K-A-N-E, and this
Kane.
is, of course, the kindest
Yes.
and most gracious possible thing to do. Mr. Welles is making it possible for me to do what in America is spoken of as a plug. And he understands.
Do they
Fine old American
I don't
custom.
understand these words. Yes.
You understand the value, however. Mr. Welles wants me to tell you that I have made a motion picture, and he is kind enough to ask me a leading question concerning it.
I'm looking forward to it.
Very kind, sir. It's a new sort of motion picture with a new method of presentation and a few new technical experiments, a few new methods of telling a picture, not only from the point of view of writing, but of showing it.
If I don't misunderstand you completely, I think there'll be a lot of jolly good new noises in it. What do you think?
I hope so. I think a few jolly good new noises are what the motion pictures could well afford these days. I hope you're right, and I hope there are some jolly good new noises. I can think of nothing more desirable in motion picture. I'm all for some jolly good new noises.
Wasn't it you, Mr. Orson Welles, that presented for the first time in modern times plays without scenery and settings in your
That's
Julius
right,
Caesar?
yes. And they were not...
Well, now,
there's no such
yes.
thing as a play without settings, because there's got to be something behind an actor, and you've got to look at something.
Very simple settings. I had an extraordinary experience once. I saw Ellen Terry's son. What was his name?
Ellen Terry's son.
Yes,
You mean,
his production of Hamlet.
You mean Gielgud?
No.
Gielgud is a relation of the Terrys.
No. Never mind his name for the moment, but I saw Hamlet produced in Russian in Moscow.
Oh, the Stanislavski production. With This I know nothing about.
I'm sorry.
Awfully sorry.
Yes. And that was done with screens and nothing else. It was done in Russian. I know my Hamlet pretty well, and all the time I thought I was listening to the English play. Do you understand
Wonderful,
that?
yes.
Yes. That was a great show.
Mr. H.G. Wells, I understand you've written a new book.
Yes. I've
Very great book.
put a lot of... Orson's a good fellow.
Sensible, too. Discerning, yes.
Yes.
No, that's true.
Yes, I've tried to do the mental attitude of two very clever young people, two university students, towards the world, how the world looks to them and what problems they have to face. It's a book for the young, about the young.
And it's a
about
very
the
young
world.
book.
It's very, thank you.
And what is the name of your book?
I think for a man that I've only met in 2 days, Orson's a very loyal cousin of mine.
What is the name of the book, Mr. Wells? Babes in the Darkness?
Babes in the Darkling Wood.
Is it-
Not Babes in the Wood, but Babes in the Darkling Wood.
Is
Because
it
it's
realistic or any fantasy in it?
Oh, no, it's quite realistic. They just talk away at their troubles, and their
Most of Mr.
problems.
Wells's novels are realistic, but it's a misconception. It's assumed that a man who could say that the air arm of a country is the most important thing about a country in the future, that such a madman must certainly write nothing but fantasy.
Well, gentlemen, it's with great reluctance that I have to say our time's up. This has been one of the real pleasures of my life. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Mr. H.G. Wells, the famous British historian and author, and Mr. Orson Welles, the theatrical genius, who met for the first time in San Antonio yesterday and have honored us with their presence tonight. To you, Mr. H.G. Wells, and to you, Mr. Orson Welles, my heartfelt thanks for your kindness. Good evening, ladies and
And that was recorded in 1940. My father, when I was a kid, my father was a teacher of French, Latin, English expression, initially at Hanbury College and then later at various private schools, Prince Alfred College, Adelaide, and Geelong College, not Geelong Grammar. He wasn't that far up the tree, but my father often said to me in my childhood that he had met Orson Welles and shaken his hand, and I always thought that that was a huge exaggeration until this week I looked up H.G. Wells on Prof, the Australian newspaper historical resource, and there in The Age, the start of 1939, are the reports of H.G. Wells giving a series of lectures across Australia and 2 or 3 in Melbourne, one of which, of course, my father must have attended. So I have shaken the hand that shook the hand of H.G. Wells, my father's hand. Orson Welles had a brilliant early career. He was 25 when that recording was made in 1940, when he was producing Citizen Kane, commonly thought of as one of the great films of the 1940s. A send-up of the press baron, whose name doesn't come to mind at the moment. But Wells, as he grew older, became more and more indulgent both in cigars and in fine wine, and used to make his money out of voiceovers, particularly for commercial products. And he did one for Paul Masson Champagne in about 1979, the outtakes of which you are about to hear. And the Paul Masson Champagne must have been pretty good, because obviously Mr. Wells had had quite a bit of it.
Turn camera.
Marked.
102, take 1.
With overlap, action please. Action Orson, please.
He doesn't do anything?
No, sorry, cut. Yeah, rolling.
102, take 2.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. So Paul Masson.
102, take 3.
Action please.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. So Paul Masson. The taste of French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There's a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. Paul Masson's superb taste shouldn't be too surprising. This champagne doesn't come from France, but it was created by a man who did, Paul Masson. Paul Masson will sell no wine before its time.
Well, obviously there was a second unrecorded take that we didn't hear, but Mr. Welles, Orson Welles, obviously had a few problems in his later life. Let's get this back on track. Among the very many notable names of science in the late 20th century, perhaps Jocelyn Bell Burnell is not the best known. But when she was in her very early 20s, she made a breakthrough with the discovery of pulsars, pulsating radio sources. Well, here's an interview with Jocelyn Bell Burnell from 1971.
But even with our largest telescopes, how would you search for such a tiny object just 7 miles across at a distance of 10,000 million miles? The neutron star was regarded as a mythical beast of no interest to practical astronomers who had better things to do with their time and their telescopes. So, what was to be the crucial discovery at first had nothing to do with either neutron stars or the Crab. At the Mullard Radio Observatory in Cambridge in 1967, the new instrument was perhaps the least glamorous telescope ever built. It looked like 4.5 acres of washing line. It was created for an investigation into certain special galaxies that are far across the universe. For this, it had to be extremely sensitive, so they simply covered a field with radio aerials. In fact, more than 2,000 of them. The array could not be moved to track a star. It simply rotated with the Earth, scanning continuously night and day across the sky. And it was to be operated full-time by one person, a girl, the graduate student who'd helped to build it, Jocelyn Bell.
We were actually using this telescope to look for quasars, because they twinkle, and this thing's specially designed to pick out twinkling things. And after we'd been running, I suppose about a few months, I began to notice there was something slightly curious on the records. They came out as paper charts. And of course on these charts you could see radio sources, and unfortunately you could also see man-made interference. But there was also something that didn't quite fit either bill. It wasn't exactly a twinkling radio source, and it wasn't exactly interference either. And then we began to notice that it was coming at the same sidereal time each time. In other words, it kept pace with the stars, not with any of our man-made activities which go by the sun or by Greenwich Mean Time.
The analysis of some 3.5 miles of data took patience and persistence, but in the end, she satisfied herself that this was a star that ticks like a clock. It was beating time in periods of just over a second. What was the first reaction of her supervisor, Dr. Tony Hewish?
It's absolute nonsense. You don't believe this at all. It must be something artificial. Nothing in nature could do this, so you disbelieve it as long as you possibly can.
Everybody's first reactions were that it must be man-made. Second reactions, not really voiced very loud, were, well, perhaps it's little green men, another civilization. They could produce a man-made signal. They would be close to a star, like our sun, and they'd move around with the stars. I think perhaps being younger myself, I found it slightly easier to believe than some of the older hands at the game. But we did really spend a lot of time with that first one trying to explain it away. We wrote round to all the astronomical observatories in sort of Britain saying, have you had any programme going which might possibly cause radio interference? Because of course the only people who keep sidereal hours, sidereal times, are astronomers. It was easier with the second one. And that was a great relief in many ways, because it removed this possibility of it being little green men. Highly unlikely that several lots of little green men would be all signalling to us, all at the same frequency, all at the same time.
Later, Jocelyn Bell wrote up her work for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Mostly her thesis is about how the aerial system works. Almost in passing, it records one of astronomy's most exciting discoveries. This was an entirely new type of star. The hunt was now on, and everybody joined in. In a sort of galactic gold rush, the discoveries poured into the scientific papers. A name was invented, pulsars.
Jocelyn Bell Burnell, the discoverer of the pulsar, recorded in 1971. To take us up to 11 o'clock, let's have a BBC lecture on radio galaxies and the telescopes, the radio telescopes that are used to detect them. This was recorded in 1963.
The ABC of the universe. Today's talk in this BBC series is called The Radio Galaxy and is concerned with how the radio astronomer sees the Milky Way. It is given by Professor R. Hanbury Brown of Jodrell Bank.
Almost all our knowledge of things beyond our own Earth has come to us by radiation which can penetrate the Earth's atmosphere. It is true we have learnt something from satellites and probes which travel outside the atmosphere, but nearly all the experiments carried out so far with these have been concerned with local things within our own solar system. In due course, we can look forward to learning a lot more in this way, because satellites can receive radiation from a much wider range than we can on Earth. This, of course, is because the Earth's atmosphere absorbs so much useful radiation. The most obvious sorts of radiation which penetrate the Earth's atmosphere are, of course, light and heat. But there are others less obvious. For example, the fast particles called cosmic rays, which are studied by physicists. And then there are the radio waves used by radio astronomers, with which I am concerned today. These are exactly the same sort of waves as light and heat, but they have a much longer wavelength. Typically, radio astronomers study waves of a length of about 1 foot, as opposed to the infinitesimal fraction of an inch that is the wavelength of light. This long wavelength has both advantages and disadvantages for the astronomer. One useful thing about the radio waves that pierce the atmosphere is that they will travel through clouds without being scattered in the way that light is. Not only through the sorts of clouds we have in the atmosphere, but also through the great clouds of dust that lie out in space, cutting off the light from distant stars and preventing us from actually seeing most of our galaxy. On the other hand, a serious disadvantage of long waves is that they need correspondingly large instruments to focus them. Radio telescopes are large and expensive, and when all is said and done, they give us only a very blurred picture of the sky. Nevertheless, we accept our limitations. We scan the sky with our radio telescope, and we compare our picture of it with the picture seen by our colleagues, the optical astronomers. First, let us make this comparison in daylight. In the daytime, we take it for granted that we can't see the stars. In fact, this is because the light from the sun is scattered by the Earth's atmosphere to such an extent that the whole sky is bright. And against this bright background, we can pick out only the sun and perhaps the moon. The radio astronomer's view is different. The sun is still bright to him, but it no longer dominates the sky. The Earth's atmosphere does not scatter the longer radio waves in which he is interested, and he can study objects well beyond the solar system by day as well as by night. If we wait till the night, then of course the optical astronomers come into their own. They see a host of stars, the brightest appearing in all directions because they're close, but the fainter ones concentrated into a band which we call the Milky Way. This band is a view of our galaxy, seen from within. It's a side-on view of the flattened disk of stars that makes up the galaxy, as seen from our own position about 2/3 of the way out from the center. The radio astronomer sees something quite different and rather surprising. He doesn't see the stars, except for the sun, and he only sees that because it's so close. The familiar constellations, like the Plough and the Southern Cross, have all gone, but their place is taken not by obscurity, but by a wholly new picture. Now, the radio telescopes reach through the dark clouds of dust and show us another aspect of our galaxy. There is a bright band of radio emission which follows the Milky Way across the sky. It's brightest when we are looking towards the center of our galaxy. It is clear beyond any doubt that this bright band comes from the galaxy, but there is still a lot about it which we don't understand. First of all, the radio waves which make up the bright band are not coming from the stars. Their origin is still partly mysterious, but in the last few years we've begun to understand it. There seem to be at least 3 ways in which these waves are generated. The first way, and incidentally the only one which is reasonably well understood, is by hot hydrogen gas. in the space between the stars. This space is not, as one might imagine, a vacuum, but instead is filled with a very, very thin gas, mostly hydrogen. Near a hot star, the hydrogen atoms get broken up into oppositely charged parts, protons and electrons. And it is the rapid motion of the electrons which generates some of the radio waves which we see coming from the Milky Way. But this hot hydrogen cannot explain the whole of the bright band of radio emission. There is some more powerful and unusual process also at work between the stars. And it is one of the main tasks of radio astronomy today to track down and explain just what this process is. I can give you a stop-press report of our present ideas about this, but I can't guarantee that they won't have changed by tomorrow. At present, we believe that the process we are trying to explain is caused by very high-speed particles traveling through the space between the stars. We think that these particles are made to give off the radiation which we pick up on Earth when they pass through the weak magnetic fields that must exist in the interstellar gas. But, as I said, that idea may have changed by tomorrow. Finally, we come to the third source of radio waves from our galaxy. This third source is exploded stars, or, as astronomers call them, supernovae. A supernova is a massive star, which, reaching a critical condition in its interior, explodes and blows off its mass in an expanding cloud. The best known supernova is the Crab Nebula, which is the remains of a star which actually exploded in AD 1054. We find that these expanding clouds are powerful radio sources, and we see them by our radio telescope as bright patches against the continuous fainter background of the band that follows the Milky Way. Incidentally, it seems possible that these remnants of supernovae may be the original sources of the fast particles which I mentioned earlier on. I've dealt at some length with the origin of the radio waves from our galaxy because their origin is vital to our interpretation of what we see with our radio telescopes. We can make, and we have made, detailed radio maps of the sky. And, as I said, these maps show us the Milky Way very clearly indeed. So we do know we are looking at our own galaxy, but until we know more about the origin of our waves, we have no proper key to our maps. Let me give you just one clear example. Our radio maps show, much to our surprise, that the galaxy, which as you will remember is a large flat disk of stars, is completely surrounded by an immense sphere of radio emission. We call this sphere the galactic halo or corona. Now this corona cannot be seen optically. There are no stars or anything obvious like that in it. We suspect that the corona is a vast ball of very thin gas, but we don't yet know how it was formed, how it is supported, or where it gets its energy from in order to give off radio waves. So far, I am afraid I've presented a rather nebulous picture of the radio galaxy, but it is at least a picture which will tell us a lot when we understand it. Now let's look at a different and clearer picture which radio astronomers have put together.
And there we'll leave that talk from 1963. I'm now listening on 439.225, 439.225 on 70 centimetres, and I wonder if anybody's there. VK3AML putting out a call.
VK3ACZ listening.
VK3VJS listening.
Oh, g'day Jeff, and g'day Peter. VK3ACZ. Okay, Pete, I'll hand it over to you to do the first, and then to Jeff. VK3ACZ, VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3AML, VK3ACZ. Good evening, Chris, Jeff, and all our listeners around Australia and further. First of all, Chris, it's good to have you back after your 2 days of that wonderful safari. Hope you and crew had a great time. A dirty weekend during the week. Half your luck. Oh dear. Just quickly, first of all, the Master Blaster of DX is up to his good stuff again. Your Strength 8 on Ironstone range. Strength 9 in the Hunter Valley. Only strength 5 up at Esk, west of Brisbane. Strength 4 at Marlborough, I don't know how you say that, in up the top end of the South Island of New Zealand. And you were 30 overnight on the horizontal loop at Strathbogie.
Ooh.
And sounding like FM quality too, I must add. Really, really good. Yeah, Jocelyn Bell loved the story about the... remember they had the pigeon poo on the antenna and they thought that was making the noise. And it turned out they found the background cosmic radiation and the like. Anyway, interesting that your dad met Mr. Wells. What a great story. It was good to hear.
I only wish I had asked him more, but we feel that about all of our parents, I think.
Yes, well, I wrote the book on wishing I could say things to people who are gone. In fact, today's been a difficult day. July's not a lot of fun. Today...
Very cold.
Today, the 8th and the 25th are our 3 birthdays, and they're difficult days, and so I struggle through them. But enough of that. Last night, somebody was playing Puppet Regime on Channel D for some strange reason, in your absence, probably keeping the frequency warm. Myself, I only made 2 parks on the air contacts, both of them with VK4 on 40 metres, but sort of early enough in the day to think that they are pretty cool. I heard myself on the Northern Utah SDR, strength 5 on 40 metres, just a strength 4 on 30 metres. Chatham Islands, strength 7 on 40, strength 5 on 30 metres. And I was very disappointed with Townsville. I was a strength 7 on 40, but only a strength 2 on 30 metres. So there you go. That's my story about today. But I dare say we might have the Master Blaster coming in as well, but I better throw it over to let Jeff have a say. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Nice to catch up with people again, even if it's only after a 2-day break. We were up on the upper floors of the Chadstone Hotel. We do this occasionally because Prue feels... with her mobility problems, she quite often feels housebound, and it's nice to have a disabled accommodation suite within easy rolling distance on a wheelchair from Chadstone, where we had mostly a window shop. We bought quite a bit of food, splurged on food quite a bit, bought a few little things, nothing major. And I saw a new type, or at least new to me, of electric vehicle. Chadstone tends to be a place where electric vehicle retailers do early displays of their products, and there's a new one called the Denza, D-E-N-Z-A. I suspect, in spite of the fact that Denza is the Spanish name for dance, I suspect it's another Chinese product like the BYD. The car has impressive characteristics, but I must say that compared to the Tesla or even the BYD, it is the ugliest design I have ever seen. I'm amazed that they haven't done something a bit more artistic. To me, all the proportions look wrong, the decor looks wrong, the interior is very much luxury, as you would expect of a car that's worth $86,000. But, God, can't they come up with better external designs? I mean, there's a sort of a pseudo radiator on the front, and a radiator is not necessary, of course, it being electric. But it's made to kind of look like a big petrol car when it doesn't need to be. Anyway, that's just an initial reaction. I'll hand it over to Jeff. How are you doing, Jeff? I don't know whether you would have been listening for us on 439-225 the last couple of nights, but I did come on there from the top floor of the Chadstone Hotel and was looking out generally your way. VK3 VJS and group VK3AML.
Good evening. No, I didn't hear a thing. I heard you'd gone into retreat up at Montsalvat, so that obviously was a bit of malicious gossip. And Peter, I did hear that diatribe on last night on Channel D. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. It sounded like Rodney Rood's brother. Terrible. Quite unnecessary. Now, Chris. Citizen Kane was based on the life and times of William Randolph
Hearst.
and his girlfriend, the silent screen actress Marion Davies. Now, I've been to San Simeon, up the coast from Los Angeles to San Francisco. Very, very interesting place. Just like what you saw on the film, Citizen Kane, but not as grim. Now, the other night you were talking about a particular ship that came to grief in the Yarra, and you thought it was something Star.
Yep.
I think you might have been getting confused with the Blythe Star, the coastal trader that went missing on the west coast of Tasmania.
Tasmania, yeah.
The load shifted and she turned turtle and sunk. But some of the crewmen managed to get out and land, and after a very rugged time where two of them died, I think, of exposure, they were rescued by a timber cutter. The ship that came to grief in the Yarra, now this is all from memory, was the Straitsman.
Ah, yes.
It was coming in to South Wharf with about 1,500 or so sheep on board, and a seaman opened the rear doors, unknown to the skipper, and she filled up and turned turtle and sank, the loss of the sheep and 2 crewmen.
Ooh.
But she was recovered and went on to lead a productive life, being a coastal trader, before being sold and possibly used overseas somewhere. Right, back to you, Chris, VK3AML in the group, VK3VJS.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that people on a loading vessel in the Yarra should have lost their lives. I mean, the furthest they could swim would be about 20 yards at that particular part of the Yarra. So that surprises me. I don't remember the deaths. I knew that the sheep had all carked it, but it was a flat bottom boat, I think, with the doors at the back, and the skipper, as you say, not knowing that the door was open, backed the thing up, and of course the Yarra piled into the back of through the open door.
I remember that too, Chris. Was that 72?
It would have been about that time. I was about 18 then, yeah. That would
I
be.
had a scrap album, and I used to put interesting things in it from the cutouts from the newspaper. Of course, the sinking of the steam tug Melbourne was another significant one too, because I used to sit on the back of the Melbourne and throw the fishing line out off the end of Reed Street Pier. And of course, it was coming to join a ship coming into port, and the master of the tug got a bit too close. She struck the bow, turned over and sank, and that was also in 72.
Yeah, I think I was in the last year of high school when all that happened, and my friend, we were 18, and my friend Alan McGavin had just bought himself his first car, which I think was a little Vauxhall. A lot of people had a Vauxhall for their first car, air-cooled, had pretty good miles per gallon as those things went. And so we went down to see that, and then afterwards went over, it could have been the Williamstown ferry at that stage, across the other side, and had a look at the Yarraville sinking village. So we had a day perusing recent disasters. Round to you, Jeff.
VK3's
3ZH. Good evening, everybody.
G'day, Steve. Anyway, I'll hand it to 3VJS and then ZH.
Okay, good evening. Steve, I think it is. This UHF just cut off for some reason. Power. But then it came back on again. So I don't know. So I hope it holds up. I went down to the Hamfest at Longwarry today. I left home here at 6 o'clock and I got down there at exactly 7 o'clock. Very hairy driving down. I'm not used to driving in the dark and trying to see signs, and I'd just about given up when I saw a sign, Longwarry, next exit. But we did find it, and in due course the members arrived. All the usual suspects, Chris, Dave, Peter, Stephen, Ralph, all the usual suspects.
Oh, is Ralph okay?
Yes.
I haven't seen him of recent times. Double ZC.
Now I'm sure that he said he had a death in the family. A grandchild was stillborn.
Oh.
Yes. But
that might explain why we haven't heard from him.
Yes. But he had been sick too for a while. And I was packing up when a rather large gentleman had approached me and shook my hand, and it was Matthew.
Aha! Yes. Yeah, he's a bigger bloke than you'd expect.
I was going to say he's a big boy. He towered over me.
Gentle giant type.
Yes, but I shared a table with Anthony, who did quite well.
Oh, yes.
And the egg was there as well. Buying up big, as if it was going to be the end of the world. But there was quite a range of stuff from GNC and other companies there flogging their wares, and a lot of deceased estates. Now, one thing that caught my eye on the opposite table was the Danish marine radio manufacturer Sailor, which comes in a green coloured case, and it was a special receiver, not very big, for 2182, and to monitor that frequency all the time. And it must have operated, I'm not quite sure how it would operate. Maybe they sent out a tone and it operated the set, but it was very small. And I should have bought it.
It was a ship survival set or something?
It's just a receiver.
Okay.
To monitor 2182. At the time, the international distress frequency. But when I went back to negotiate, it had gone, and I asked the chap, and he said, yes, somebody bought it to possibly modify for the coffin cheaters frequency.
Sorry.
That wasn't his words, that was my words.
Right.
When you think about it, it has merit, because it would be just a crystal and a minimum of tuning up. But all in all, it was a good day, a long day, and I made a few dollars, but because I didn't have the space, I could only bring in about a quarter of the stuff in the back of the truck. But there's always more Hamfests. So there you are. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, no worries. I remembered that Hamfest, but it clashed with Prue's plans and mine, so we couldn't get along to that this time. Had I had words with Steve beforehand, I might have arranged something with him, 3SL. But no, the getting back here was this afternoon, and it would have clashed. As it was, we had a great time at Chadstone anyway. Anyway, 3ZH is there. I've been reading a little bit about the write-up of your Cairns lecture, Steve. It seems it was received very well, and I see pictures of you there in among the palm trees with a typical tropical shirt, very heavily illustrated, as tropical shirts are. Back to you, Steve. VK3ZH3AML.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, no, it was nice to be asked to write up a bit of a talk about the event and some of the feedback that we got. Yeah, it was. I'm not naturally. I think I mentioned this to you last time we spoke. I'm not naturally a very competent public speaker, and you know, I do need to rehearse what I say and speak from a script, but do so in such a way that I've done it enough times for it to sound almost ad lib, but not necessarily completely ad lib. So I think I probably did my best talk on the day, and I certainly felt most confident at the time. And yeah, the feedback was positive, and there were some interesting technical questions that came my way at the end, which probably I was the only one that would have been able to answer those on behalf of the agency, which makes me feel good. So it was a good experience, and I felt quite honoured to do it and privileged, and for me, I wanted to perform well, and that probably meant that I put a bit of pressure on myself. In the 2 weeks leading up to it, I did have a number of anxious moments there. But anyway, it's done now, and I can relax and look back on it fondly and not have to feel anxious anymore. How do you go with public speaking, Chris? You do a bit of it.
Yeah.
Do you read from a script, or
it depends.
Do you just have a conversation?
It depends. If I know the subject very well, and with some of the compilations I've put together, you can imagine sitting on an editing suite for the better part of 3 weeks, having put 5 weeks of research into it beforehand. I know the bloody thing back to front. I don't feel any sensation of lack of competence, and under those circumstances things usually sail through. In subjects where I'm not so confident, or where I know I'm in front of a super expert audience, and this occurred in America, in Silicon Valley, when I gave a talk on modulated light in front of people who were physicists and optical engineers. I felt slightly intimidated and was very glad that I had PowerPoint to fall back on, and I used to be very good at PowerPoint before I switched to doing everything on video, which I do now. Most places now have 1080p or better video projectors, and everything I used to do on PowerPoint I can do via that, usually with a pre-recorded soundtrack, so that I can concentrate on the feedback rather than actually delivering the lecture. The embarrassing thing for me now is, I don't know whether you've noticed, the last 12 months, last 18 months, I've had trouble with, particularly on the left side, tumour on my auditory nerve, which has almost killed the hearing on the left side, and for some strange reason the hearing on the right has declined quite a bit too. Of course, I am 72. And we have question time at the end, and frequently the people that I'm speaking to are reasonably elderly, or, you know, if people in the audience are under 40, that's more by luck than by design with most of these historical lectures. And they get up and ask me a question. Frequently they have a low voice. I'm straining to hear them.
You can't hear them.
And there have been one or two occasions where my answer has borne scant relationship to what the person asked.
What the question was,
And under those circumstances, I get a case of brown underwear fairly easily.
No, I understand.
Yeah, I actually don't mind the questions part that much, even if it's tricky, because I feel like I'm having a conversation with someone rather than having to get through a particular piece of content, if you like.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I feel when it comes to question time, and someone will either stand up or be handed a microphone in the crowd who will be asking the question, and I can look at them in the face from standing on stage, and it's almost like I've zoned out on everyone else in the room, and I'm just listening to that person and having a chat with them. So for whatever reason, that to me feels a lot more comfortable than getting through a slideshow, you know, of 15 slides, knowing I've got to do it in 15 minutes and not say or shit. So it's interesting, the psychology that goes on. And I've done it, I think in this particular role I've made maybe 10 presentations that have been, you know, to a formal audience. I do remember feeling a little bit in my first couple of years at the job. Did a couple of presentations at amateur clubs, and there's always someone in the room that knows more than you about something, and they'll always ask you about it, hoping to trip you up.
Oh yeah.
So you do need to be humble.
This is the smart ass effect.
That's right. That's right. But you do need to be humble, and you need to know how to deflect. And you need to know how to say, "That's a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that, but I'm happy to get back to you."
In the distant past, Steve, you would be also, with some amateurs, living down a rather heavy-handed attitude to the regulation of the amateur service as well. I'm thinking more early 70s and the draconian laws they had in those days, and a certain man who used to wear a safari suit.
Yes, I know the guy.
Yes.
Of the guy.
He was a nice bloke, but the fact that he was 6'6".
Didn't want to mess with him.
Yes. A certain
David Golds wear a safari suit.
Yes.
It looked like a safari suit.
The only thing missing was the 12-bore elephant gun.
Sorry, Jeff.
The only thing missing was the 12-bore elephant gun.
Well, he didn't. I know that my predecessor with my call sign, when he was non-licensed, this is in the mid to late 60s, he built a circuit out of radio, television and hobbies called the Little General, which was a tuner, and it had an oscillator in it, and Tony worked out that he could reconfigure it as a transmitter by changing the oscillator to the PA and the other valves to the modulator section. He put it on the air, I think on 160 metres. It was easy to do it there without any neutralisation. And he'd been using it for several days, playing records over the air, not terribly well. And then one afternoon he heard a bit of a thump outside his room on the side of his house, and Mr. Golds had climbed over the fence to the sideway. Tap, tap, tap on the window. Tony rolls the window up, and there's a man in a safari suit saying, "Mr. Sanderson, will you kindly get that thing off the air?"
I never had the privilege of meeting the character, which is funny because all of my mates, when I was a teenager in the suburb of my upbringing, did get visits and did end up in the local magistrate's court. But there you go. Steve, you'd have been right. If only Quiet Achiever, myself, Chris and Jeff had known you were giving the lecture, we would have been up there down the back heckling you all the way through. Said things like, what about 27 megs, and does it work on UHFCB? We'd have stitched you right up, Steve. But with friends like us. No, just as an aside, everybody, in case anybody didn't know, we had a severe solar storm this afternoon. K-index got up to 7. We were hit by a CME that was sort of predicted from a couple of days ago, even a suggestion that we might have got aurora tonight. I see it's dampened down a bit, but we have no chance of seeing an aurora tonight except with vivid imagination because it's totally overcast. Back to you, Chris. It's VK3AML in the group VK3ACZ.
Auroras are long gone.
There was a what?
Said my roarers are long gone.
It's incredibly cold at the moment. I've got the little Vulcan Tangy heater running full tilt at the moment, pointed at me.
Your luck.
It's I don't know where you're sitting. If you're sitting in your normal position there, Peter, I hope you're rugged up.
Oh yeah, I've got a sheepskin jacket. I don't know what you call them, those things with the hoods on them, they're very nice. But the door's open here so my station manageress can come and go. But anyway, back to you, Chris.
Yes, but she has a nice fur coat. But yeah.
I've got the 160 metre transmitter running. And good evening to everyone who's listening on 1825 kilohertz AM. And it does a wonderful job of warming up the shack.
Oh.
After about half an hour, it's beautiful and toasty warm in here now.
Okay, is it one of those with a force air cooling through a finned heat sink?
The fan switches on when the PA reaches 67 degrees.
Okay.
Which it took tonight. It took a little longer to reach that. I was expecting it. I've been sort of watching the behaviour of the transmitter in 100% duty cycle mode. I don't normally operate it that way, and I'm trying to find a sweet spot where when the fan runs, it maintains the PA at a stable temperature without it continuing to rise, and I found that spot.
Okay.
And the fan switch is on at 67 degrees, and that took about maybe 20 minutes from the beginning of the transmission to when the fan switched on.
I would start to look up the temperature at which solder becomes plastic, because that would be a bit of a worry.
Be a worry, Chris, and I think I would smell it as well by the time it got to that temperature. But no, it's currently sitting at, let me reach over, 67 degrees. The fan is on, and it's lovely and toasty here in the shack at 23 degrees.
No, I know what you mean about temperature rise. My true confessions time, folks. My very first pirate transmitter, which was 160 metres, and I built it in the summer of 1969.
Don't say it, Chris. There could be an RI listening.
Well,
be aware of the statute of limitations, Chris.
It was, it probably is. It's nearly 60 years ago. But it was built with the remains of a mid-1930s console radio. God, I should have kept that radio. Imagine how many $100 it'd be worth now. But anyway, I ripped it apart. In those days, they were just old junk. And it had a power transformer that was only moderately sized, and it was potted in paraffin wax. And you had a window of opportunity when you were transmitting. You'd switch it on, and the window of opportunity was between the time you switched on and when the transformer started to have a poo.
Oh my goodness.
Brown wax used to fall out of the bottom of it. There was a little residue of poo on the desk underneath it. So, my transmissions were perforce limited to about a minute. But it was sufficient for me to meet the then VK3UI, who introduced me to Tony 3AML in that summer. And that, of course, led to nearly 60 years' worth of involvement with amateur radio one way or another. So it all worked out nicely in the end. But we did... I didn't run into trouble with Mr. Gold. I ran into trouble with Rodney Champness, who I think was in the department at the time. If not, he was rather assiduous at the imposition of rules. When I arranged to get over to Dan 3UI's place, and Dan used to live not too far from me on the corner of Glenferrie Road and Riversdale Road, Hawthorn, very close, near Stotts Corner. And when Dan opened the door to me and said, "Oh, come in, I must show you the shack. And by the way, I got a phone call from the department for talking to you." I said, "Oh, I didn't realise that was illegal." He said, "Well, that was illegal enough, but they said they suggest, Mr. Long, that you get your licence forthwith." And that, at the time, didn't result in the licence. It resulted in reversion to light beam communication, which was a little more difficult to detect. I don't know. It probably was, by the letter of the law of that time, I think any communication beyond your own property, whether it was a intercom telephone line or a light beam or whatever, was technically illegal. And I remember in the early 60s, when I was a kid, a very small kid, this would have been about 1962, there was a local paper that reported on a network of telephones that had been set up by some students in early high school, about 5 years older than myself. And the department closed them down the next day, not because they were operating it, but because they had received newspaper coverage of it, and the department didn't want to be seen not to be enforcing the law. So much more draconian times, Steve.
I think so, yeah. That's interesting, Chris. Well, we didn't have such a thing as a class licence back then as well. And so now with the class licence, if you operate within the conditions, you don't need any sort of licence. Only the equipment that's approved and within the parameters of the class licence. And there's actually an amazing assortment of frequencies that are available as well, from very, very low in the kilohertz up to millimetre wave bands that are available for class licence, and some of the allocations of power are quite high as well.
Well, the one that particularly interests me, and I had a talk to 7DR about this because he used to operate on 630 metres across Bass Strait sideband to 3HP, who was also working 630 metres, and the great thing about that band, 472 to 479, I think it was that you could get through across Bass Strait any hour of the night or day. It was just totally reliable, very rarely had selective fade. If you did get selective fade, it was on a very long cycle, like once every 10 minutes or something. But 7DR said to me, I eventually gave up on it because the requirements on the band were so restrictive. 2.1 kilohertz bandwidth was specified for the band, and I think it was 2 watts ERP, but with the sort of antennas you could get up, rarely more than 1% efficiency. That might mean that you put in 500 watts to get that 2 watts ERP.
That's right. At least it was an EIRP restriction rather than a power from the transmitter condition, because as you say, if the antennas are so inefficient that you're going to need to put many watts in to get any kind of result, the EIRP figure is really the friend.
I have a question for Steve.
Go ahead.
Steve, is 27 megs marine still a legal and legitimate band?
There's a class licence that covers that, Jeff. Yes, it is. And you do not need a maritime operator's certificate to use the 27 meg portion for marine, but you do need to have a transceiver that is tested to the standard that applies to that kind of device. And that is a bit of a problem now because no one makes them anymore, Jeff.
Well, I have quite a collection in my museum, including one that has upper sideband.
Yes, well, that's good, but you won't find too much activity there. I think some of the Coast Guards still monitor, is it 27880, Jeff, or 910? One of those two, as standard practice for marine vessels that don't have someone who has the marine certificate proficiency, which you need to use VHF. But very, very little activity there at all. I haven't heard anyone on that band for many, many years.
I can remember when it was first made legal, it was called a limited area licence, and we had a friend up in Sydney who was a ranger on a wildlife reserve, and he had 27880 for use in the reserve, even though he did have a boat to patrol the Hawkesbury River. But he did have a limited area licence. Now that was a long time ago. I don't know whether it still applies on land or it is only for marine applications.
Yeah, the class licence allows... I remember having to answer someone's question about this a year or two back, about whether it could be used on land. And I'll have to check, but I have a feeling maybe the answer is no.
Okay, and now another question, is 55 meg still a licence-free band?
Class licence, there might be something on 55. I'll have to look. There's so many allocations. If it is, it'll be really, really tiny power, Jeff.
Yes, I have some realistic, they're brand new in the box. I bought them off Bradley from down the valley, who's always at the Hamfests. And they're brand new in the box, and they're designed to use riding and all that sort of stuff. And I've also got a very small handheld, which is 3 channels. I think the allocation is 6 channels in the 55 meg range. Very, very low power, possibly just milliwatts.
Right, let me take a look. I found the LIPD class licence. 55 megahertz, you say? Well, there's auditory transmitters on 41 megahertz and 43. 1.3 milliwatts, the IRP. What else have we got? I'll probably have to spend a bit of time perusing this, Jeff. Okay. No, I don't see anything on 50, 70 and 74, 75. But nothing on 50 megahertz that I can see here, Jeff.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Now, just getting back to the subject, Chris was talking about public speaking. I've only had to speak 3 times, and that was for eulogies. And one chap, Jack, who was on legal CB, I gave a eulogy for poor old Jack. And then my uncle, Chris knows about my uncle, the musician who played with Graham Bell. I had to do a eulogy after Graham Bell himself. And the last one was a chap I used to work with in earth moving, Rudy. He was a very keen devoted pilot, and he had his own self-launching glider up at Coldstream. I tuned the radio up for him once and did a couple of radio checks, so he took me on a very long extended flight down around, under power of course, or right around Wilson's Prom and everything. But in his eulogy, I wrote out a terrific eulogy. Being born in the late 20s in Germany, he was of course a member of the Hitler Youth, where he learnt his gliding skills, and I still reckon he went on to become a Luftwaffe pilot. His widow said, no, you can't say anything about that. So at the last minute I was thwarted. I've written out a terrific eulogy, but there you are. And it wasn't too bad, really. But public speaking, other than that, no way, Steve. Back to you. Oh, one other thing, Chris. Way back in the early 60s, 62, 63, I bought a couple of cheap walkie-talkies from Walthams, and of course they were the latest thing. And I had them licensed through the PMG, through the 27 meg mobile hand phone licence, where they allocated a selective channel between 27230 up to 27280. But most of the crystals that came into the country in the walkie-talkies were on 27240. But they also allocated 3828 kilocycles, and that would have been for the ex-World War II walkie-talkies made by the Galvin Corporation, later to become Motorola. I don't think that was used, but in my museum I have a metal box, I think you've seen it, Chris, made by Vaughan Communications in Sydney, which is on 2838 kilocycles, and on the back of the microphone, which is a microphone speaker, it has scratched BB Bravo Bravo Sierra Charlie Unit 3 or something. I reckon that was used by Bondi Beach Surf Club. I reckon that's the only explanation, and that was their first walkie-talkie that they had for patrolling Bondi Beach. Of course, they're all using probably P25, dare I say the word, Motorola. I don't know whether it's encrypted or not, but that's a little bit of history. And of course that band was gobbled up by the CB band in July 77, and it was moved up to around about 27.5, and that was discontinued, I think, around about 2015. That might come up on your records there, Steve. Back to you, Chris.
I used to listen quite a bit. We had friends at Point Lonsdale, and I would go down with my 4-band national transistor radio. We're talking 1969, 70, 71, when I was in my late teens. And I'd take down a notebook. I've still got the notebooks here, logbooks, listening logs. And in those days, late 60s, early 70s, you could hear all these AM stations across 120 metres, around 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 megs, all chatting to each other. Oh, the fish are biting over here. Yeah, I've got my girlfriend down below the decks. I'll have to give her one later. That sort of stuff.
So you heard me chatting, did you?
No
Was that you, Pete? I wish.
Yes, well, but they were fairly, how could I put it, salty lot. You probably remember listening on there, Jeff. That was, you've done your fair share of maritime mobile, I think, in your time.
2112 for fishing trawlers.
Now, this 2524 comes to mind.
Well, that's still current, but not used much now, as far as I know, by, of course, VHF have taken over.
Yeah, well, a walkie-talkie for that frequency, you'd be talking something about 20 feet high. Or something with a lot of inductive loading in it, and probably very narrow band. There were such things around, but most of the old maritime radios I've seen were pensioned off in the around the 1976, 77 mark.
End up with Anthony.
I've seen more that they actually, if you convert them to 160 metres, they make a nice little AM rig.
Little, some of them are quite large, but as you say, yes, with fairly hefty output, some of them.
Oh, yeah. What I found is I had to modify the output. It was usually an L network in the output designed for antennas of the length on a boat. And if you run them on an inverted L, you have to modify that really with a pi network. But it wasn't difficult to do. And one of the first AM radios I had here after I got the full ticket for 160 was a Western radio made in Sydney in about 1960. And
Had one of those, a very impressive radio with a three band AM and 2 or 3 shortwave bands. I had one of those, a cream colour.
Yep, that's right. And a 12 DQ6 in the final was my memory of them. So that could put out about 60 watts if you were lucky.
Oh, Chris, by the way, I need to congratulate Jeff on his correct nomenclature. No, that's not the right word. Terminology. It's not the coffee break net. He's right. It's the coffin cheaters net. Good on you, Jeff.
And Chris, stop whinging about being 72. Wait till you get to my age, 86, and then you might have something to whinge
about. Okay. Two things wrong with me. One is the hearing, and the other one's bloody varicose veins. That's about all I've got wrong.
Well, whatever age I am, I get to drive Miss Daisy, or Lorna's a proper name, but she will be 100 in, what's the date today? In 9 days.
Oh, congratulate her on the day.
Will she get a letter from the King?
It's all organised. It's ready to be presented because you have to apply for these things well in advance. Funny thing, I used to look after a fellow who, he turned 100 when, Scott Morrison signed his, because you get certificates and cards and all that from the local member, state premier, federal member, prime minister, king or queen, and all that. And his was signed Scott Morrison, Australian Prime Minister, but it was 2 days after he'd been kicked out of office.
Good one.
I got it.
Yep.
One other thing. Oh, golly, I'm having a senior's moment, Chris.
I have to ride the level control for you, Jeff. You're up higher than the others.
After all, I am so I'm entitled to have a senior's moment, and I've still got it. I think what was I going to say? Somebody take it.
Now, this is an interesting little bit of trivia for anyone that's interested in taking advantage of the class license. There's a whole band of frequencies right down low that you can use with no restriction. Sorry, I'll just read this again. A general radio communications transmitter's operating parameters for any radio communications transmitter, no additional requirements apply. You can operate on 14 kilohertz.
40 kilohertz?
14, 1-4, with 200 microwatts, EIRP. You can operate between 14 and 199.5 kilohertz with 50 microwatts. You can operate from 200.5 kilohertz to, from 20.5 kilohertz to 48 kilohertz with 43 microwatts. From 48 kilohertz to 70 kilohertz with 7.5 microwatts. From 70 kilohertz to 160 kilohertz with 3 microwatts. From 160 kilohertz to 190 kilohertz with 1 microwatt. What would you do it for? Here's an interesting one. 190 kilohertz to 285 kilohertz with 500 nanowatts. Here's the interesting one. If you want to do something reasonable, 26.957 to 27.283 with 1 watt. EIRP.
That's the New Zealand CB band, isn't it?
No, that's actually in our band.
Oh,
It's in our band. And often when you listen there, you'll hear medical telemetry. I remember hearing it as a kid from the Maroondah Hospital here in Ringwood.
Mm.
They had telemetry devices down there, and I would hear it on 27.965. 27.965, somewhere there, or anyway, right down in the lower end of the band. Now, Jeff, 50 megahertz, 54 to 56, you can use 2.5 milliwatts. But if you want to use some decent power, 40.66 to 41.0 megahertz, 1 watt EIRP.
That's LIPD, isn't it?
That's right.
Hmm.
Speaking of the medical side of things, the diathermy machine, which a surgeon uses to cut and or cauterise veins, arteries and the like, we were told that was shortwave RF. There's a plate that is stuck under the patient's butt cheek with some goo on it to make it superconductive, and of course the diathermy it's a little knife-shaped thing but without the sharp edge, and the surgeon has a foot pedal that he steps on to activate it, and it does the arcing and cutting. Also, when the young lass that I was carer for was getting an ultrasound, I asked the radiographer what frequency it worked on, and surprise, surprise, he said, "Oh, at the moment I'm using 3.6 megahertz."
Ooh.
Those diathermy machines modified early in the war to interfere with the German Knickerbein system. Knickerbein meaning crooked leg.
Hang on.
And they
gotcha.
got them up on 31 megs. But then those crafty krauts, not to be outdone, they went up to 70 megs. So I think they modified the BBC One transmitter on the Alexandra Palace, running 30 kilowatts or something, and they tricked those so-called crafty krauts to drop their bombs in the wrong area or to give up and go home again.
I know that, by the way, I just did a calculation for 14 kilohertz. A quarter wave antenna is 5.3 kilometres. The wavelength at 14 kilohertz is 21 kilometres, 21.41 kilometres. Holy moly!
Well, when they opened Gippsland, I went down there, and of course the antenna they were transmitting on 3 different frequencies. 11, 12 and 13 kilocycles, I think. Mm. And the antenna was virtually a capacitor. It was that inefficient. And the main tower at 1,200 feet was non-radiating. That was only there to support the star-shaped antenna. Mm. It had smaller towers around at 600 feet to support the points, and of course it was all working against an earth mat, and it was virtually a very, very inefficient capacitor.
I think the same applies to Northwest Cape. That's on about 19 kilohertz, I think. Many years ago, this is again in the 60s, I had a book which, strangely enough, I found out later that Tony Sanderson also had been brought up on. It was probably the original ultra-dangerous electric book for boys. It would have been illegal to publish it for any time after the Second World War. It was a thing published between the war called The Boys' Book of Electricity. I've got it on the shelf here somewhere. And it told you how to do really interesting things, like how to build an X-ray machine. And One of the things that they showed you how to do was how to build a capacitive or an inductive transmitter. And with the inductive transmitter, I had a hoop like a, wicker hoop about 1 metre in diameter, and you would wind about at least 500 turns of very fine wire on it. In those days you could get copper wire fairly cheaply, and you'd get another hoop similarly wound, and by feeding audio into it at about 10 watts you could transmit several hundred metres if the hoops were aligned the right way there. But it was very tinny because, of course, the higher frequencies propagated much better than lower frequencies. You could also do it by using a back-to-front speaker transformer feeding directly into the antenna.
Oh, I did better than that, Chris. I used to get 2 tin cans, put a hole in them, connect them by a length of string.
That's acoustic, but I tried various electric methods, like I had a pretty good 160 metre antenna by the end of the 60s, and I fed very high impedance, very high power audio into it, and at the higher frequencies you could, using a high impedance input audio amplifier, you could pick up very tinny audio at a distance from it that was viable, except it was mixed with an awful lot of hum from surrounding power cables.
Yeah, I was just being silly, by the way. The question for you, Steve, all those frequencies you read out where you're allowed to use microwatts and the like, do any of those that you read out have any current established purposes?
Oh, well, Chris would probably be able to talk about what's used there. I can't see a purpose for such a low power transmitter on those frequencies, but I will do some investigation. Chris, do you have any ideas?
All I can say is that most of the transmitters that I know of that are down near there, like Northwest Cape, which are capable of running, I think, close to 1 megawatt, and as Jeff said, they're basically a huge high vertical with a mat almost, 700 metres up in the sky, covering several kilometres. So it's a massive, great top-loaded vertical, basically, with a incredible earth mat in it. And I've seen photographs of the tuning unit, a variometer tuning unit at Northwest Cape, and the coils are about 3 times the height of a person, made of very high-tech multi-strand, basically Litz wire, and it's really something worth seeing if you can find a photograph of it. But the advantage of it, as I understand it, is that very, very long wavelengths, very low frequencies, can penetrate the sea to a certain depth, so they're useful in communicating with, dare I say it, nuclear submarines.
Well, when I went down to Woodside in the early 80s with the video camera, I've got it all on video, of course, and if I remember rightly, the feeder cable from the 3 or 4 transmitters ran in an open trench right out down to the antenna tuning building, which is still there, and they didn't demolish that, or the transmitter building, and it was open, and I remember stepping over it, and I'm sure I could hear it through my ears. It was a long time ago, and I'm sure it came out on the video, audio. Yeah, but I did get a nice folder from them. I probably applied for a QSL card, but they didn't have the facilities to issue QSL cards, but I got a nice letter, and I've got this folder. So next time you come down to pick up your book on Hollywood and early television, there's 2 books. I'll show this to you if I can dig it out of the archives. And I think I've even got an original 27240 licence that belonged to David, who is now VK3YSK.
Oh, okay.
He's 92.
Yeah, Steve, you really should see Jeff's museum. It takes the breath away. It's a collection of radio gear going back to about the time of the Second World War in some cases. You might have some even earlier stuff there, Jeff. Certainly.
Oh, bits and pieces, yes.
Certainly the valves.
Yeah, the valves, yes. And one other thing I was going to say at excuse my French, it's midnight. My clock's, or my weather station's bipping, you can probably hear. I have a square metal box which is all valve, and it's on 2524, and it was made by Douglas Radio, and I think it's the same one that was up in East Melbourne, Chris, where you used to get all the TV components. I can't reach this thing to turn it off, but that was on 2524, and I'm sure it has two. Did you say 6 DL6s or something?
Well,
outputs?
The one that I had 12 DQ6s in it because, of course, it was running from 13.8 volts.
Yeah.
They'd supply the filament direct. Using a 6 DQ6 wouldn't make much sense unless you had two.
No, probably 12. So I could be wrong. I'd have to pull it apart and have a look. But I paid, I don't know, $20 for it or something. And it still cuts the mustard into a dummy load, Steve. And even the old Vaughan thing on 3828 still works with its geranium devices. I know you germanium transistors in it.
One of the things that Jeff found for me, he very kindly gave me it after I showed an interest in it, was a photocell. From what I can work out, it probably was used either for the very first fax service that ran from Melbourne to Sydney, which opened in August 1929, or it was out of a pre-1930 talking picture projector with optical sound, because it was a potassium photocathode GE photocell. And so far as I could see, they were discontinued in 1930. So we're talking something going back right to the start of the technology. So thank you very much for that, Jeff. That was very much appreciated. That's sitting on the shelf in front of me.
Hey, at the Hamfest today, there was an old chap with the Gippsland Gate Radio Club, and he had a big box there full of valves, brand new, still in their boxes.
God.
Now, it's the valve that won the war. Now, do you know what I'm talking about, Chris?
The valve that won the war. Some prisoner of war said, what, not in the 60s?
No, they were made
Type
in Holland.
3 Mark II?
No, the valve, they were made in Holland.
Oh, wait a minute, the Lover, the 3-valve
No,
thing.
this is just the valve itself, the tube, the valve or tube that won the war. They were always painted red.
Oh, okay, you've got me there.
But this old bloke, he was right with it, and he was younger than me. He was old, he was young. No, hang on. Was he? No, he was older than me. He said, "Well done, Sonny."
Struth.
Give up?
Well,
I know. It's the EF50.
Spot on there, young Stephen.
Vacuum tube. The thermonic vac valve most widely heralded as the valve that won the war. Originally designed by Philips in the Netherlands for television sets. Its advanced high-frequency performance made it an essential component in British airborne and ground radar networks.
was this an acorn valve?
No, it's about the same size as a 6v6.
Hang on.
Turn it down, but usually in a metal case, painted. No, it's just round like a tube, flat top, but with a special base, small pin glass base.
Okay.
And they were always the Dutch and the English ones were painted red, but I have seen some that were not painted. They might have come from America, I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm looking. Oh, I see. Red. It looks like it's got a. It's a metal valve or something. Secret electronic component instrumental in saving Britain from the Luftwaffe. I honestly hadn't heard about that.
I don't believe it. I've got one over here.
Oh, yeah.
Now, on Friday morning's Coffin Cheaters Net, Laurie the Lamb indicated that valves were better because they glow. That's what he said.
By the way, did you get my email on that subject, Peter?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Yeah. So, the... I'm sure... Look, although I'm interested in radio history, I've never been interested in collecting much of the gear because it's just too bulky. I haven't got the space for it.
Yes.
Whoop.
Here we go. Wind it down.
Yep.
Mine has even overflowed here into the bedroom, Chris. I've got a bookshelf over there, and the whole top row is devoted to Errol, and then there's two other rows to Hollywood, and there's general books down below. But on the top, I've had to bring in microphones, transistor radios, SWR bridges, and everything, because I've got no room for them in the second bedroom.
Yes, you obviously haven't... You have to go to Hamfest, Jeff. You obviously haven't got enough gear.
Jeff, I think I'd like to see your collection of 11-metre radios, particularly the ones that work up on 27.880.
As long as you don't... As long as
no,
you...
I won't take them. I won't.
Now you're in trouble, Jeff. You better stash up your gear.
Look, I've had Mr. Gold, not in here, but he was in the shed. And I've had another inspector way back in the 60s. I think his name was Shepherd. And he didn't find anything that he could take pertaining to 27 because I didn't have anything. So he took a Lafayette VHF tuner, 146 to 174, which I used to listen to VKC. The thing, a broadband RF amplifier for short wave, which was sitting on top of a Helicrafter's S76 short wave receiver. But there's a story involved in that. They had it for months and months and months up in Jollymont, in that old building near the Melbourne Cricket Club, cricket ground, where the FM experimental tower was. And I said, I want to see the superintendent. I was ushered into his office, and I said, you've had this receiver. I said, either charge me or give it to me back. I was pretty blunt, because this had been going on for months and months and months. And he got on the phone, and he called up somebody. I think it was the inspector that actually pinched me, and he said, have all that equipment for Mr. Sylvester ready down at reception when he comes down. So I won that case, and of course we had a lively discussion about 27 megs, and the poor old bloke nearly had an epilepsy, I think it's called, about CB, because he said it would detract from the revenue of the PMG postal and telephone service. Well, I think that proved to be not the case. If anything, it would have improved the income of the telephone and postal service in those early days, and the government as well, with all their input duties and whatever. But I got it back, but whilst they were fidgeting and farting around down, I had a folder there. I reckon it was 2 inches thick, and I had a quick look through it. And I've often wondered, Steve, what has happened to that folder? Where is it? could I access it through Freedom of Information? I'd love to have that in my archives. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, fascinating, Jeff. Fascinating. Very interesting. Oh, Pete, I have found some information about the 14 kilohertz band. The 14 kilohertz band with the 200 microwatt power limit is allocated under the LIPD class license. Its purpose is to authorise uncoordinated license-free operation of extremely low-power, short-range devices while protecting other RADCOM services from harmful interference. Because this specific frequency range lies deep within the VLF spectrum, physical antenna sizes make traditional HF data transmission impractical. Instead, the allocation is used for short-range inductive loops, often used in proximity readers, specialty tagging, or scientific research equipment. Scientific and medical devices include certain medical monitoring equipment, specialised scanners, or scientific station testing devices that emit extremely low frequency signals. Some consumer electronics include very low power consumer or industrial telecommand equipment requiring limited range signalling. So 14 kilohertz has several uses.
That's interesting, Steve, and just when I thought everything was above 2.4 gig.
Just as a matter of interest, Steve, it would be about 50 years ago this year, I went with the late Ivor Morgan 3DH, who died in 77. He was born in 1908. With a friend of his who was involved with the department and had been at some stage an RI. His name was Len Pearson. He had a two-letter call. I don't recall what it was, but I remember that night, which would have been the summer of 75, 76. We were all going to see a display of telecom research in Clayton, opposite Monash University, long gone now. But particularly we had a look at the high voltage testing laboratory where they tested insulating materials for high voltage resistance. And I got into a talk with Len Pearson about CB. This is in 75, end of 75. And he said, quote, "CB radio will be licensed for the general public over my dead body." Well, guess what? I shouldn't laugh. He died
And then it became class
in March 1977, and it was over his dead body. So there was a whole spectrum of the department who were dead against CB, and I think the thing that tipped it was Dick Smith importing huge numbers of these things, which was it was an anomaly. It was legal to import them, but it was not legal to use them.
That's right, yes. Dick Smith was instrumental in lobbying for the licensing arrangements that changed with regards to 27 megahertz. He had a huge impact on that outcome.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
I have the book here. I'm looking at it now, the Dick Smith, The Life of an Adventurous Life, and he has a specific chapter in there about when he went to America to see the gentleman who, or one of the big knobs at Midland, and when he introduced himself, the big knob said, "Oh, you're that character that towed the imitation or false
iceberg
Sydney Harbour to try and help with the shortage of water." And without any further ado, he said, "You've got the contract to import and sell Midland radios." Like that. As you know, the influx of Midlands, 23 channel sets, flooded the market. Everyone was buying them and using them. Eventually, the inquiry we had, and 1st of July 1977, it was made legal. And a world first, we had UHF as well.
I don't recall anybody using UHF until the 80s. It must have been very expensive.
No, I've got my logbook here. My first contact was a chap in South Oakley, Mr. Hughes, who I got to know his son very well, Jeff Hughes, and I was using an FM 320, and the antenna was a Belling & Lee J-pole, 4 J-poles mounted around a mast, which I bought from Ham Radio in Hyatt Street, Richmond, through Bob, VK3AML in later years. And it was that so much an early model, I should say, of Philips that it did not have the repeaters in it. So I had to have it modified later when Philips had their repeater system running up on Listerfield Hills.
Yeah, I think Waltham Trading Company, Ham Radio Suppliers and United Trade Sales must have created a lot of headaches for the department by selling the sort of stuff that they had. It was 62 sets, I think Snowy had lots of. I believe he sold Type 3 Mark II spy radios too in the 60s. My friend Chris Holliday down in Tasmania still has a Type 3 Mark II. You know, it's built in what looks like a 1940s suitcase, but you flip it open and it's full of all of this stuff, you know, plug-in coils and all that sort of thing.
Ross Madden, 3ZZ down at Hallam and Gather. What's the name of the place? Can't think of it. Starts with them. He actually built one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, they were popular as an AM radio, 40, 80, 160 back in the 60s. And I think now, though, they're used more as museum pieces, drift-o-matic VFOs and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Hello, Chris.
Sorry? Hello?
Yeah, hi, Chris. This is Harry.
Oh, g'day, Harry.
In fact, speak your radio first. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
You know what happened today?
Oh, yeah, it's the 50 years since that day I was at Armidale for the opening of the official opening of 3CR. I did the text on that on my Facebook page with a few of the photos I have of that actual day. And they're crediting people as having been there since day one, and they weren't. Greg Siegel, for example, joined 3CR after it moved to Collingwood. He wasn't involved with Armidale at all. So they've got some things wrong in their promo materials, but I think you might understand from my write-up why I chose not to be involved with the 50-year celebration, though I'd be very willing to hand the tapes that I have, and I have lots of tapes from the first 12 months of 3CR that I need to find a home for. Back to you, Harry.
Yes, I actually spoke to somebody there today, and hopefully they will make contact.
Good.
And I did mention the amount of material you have, and you should have been there. There were lots of people there from the old days.
They're
some
all
of them,
apart
worse
from
for wear.
Apart from yourself, Harry.
Even today, after speaking to Chris Holliday for about half an hour, I said, look, I have to go because, you know, this whole place is giving me a headache, especially looking at some of the people and some of the music that they had playing on stage. I can hardly stand most of the stuff now. But, you know, for historical reasons, yeah, I reckon, you know, you should have been there. But anyway, yes, I have spoken to people, and because I have a lot of material, a lot of photos too, and I thought they might want them, but I think their historical activities are a bit lacking. People don't have as much interest as us.
Harry, I'm in touch with yourself and Greg Siegel and Chris Holliday and about 3 or 4 others. The rest of them I'd prefer never to see again so long as I live. Let me explain. You probably are aware that I'm wishy-washy left-wing. I vote Labor. Like many people, I vote Labor. But the people at that place are so far off the edge of anything realistic. And I've already got an ASIO record as a result of being involved with that thing 50 years ago. And I watched, without getting too far into the politics, I became the listener sponsor, the group representative for the Wireless Institute to the Community Radio Federation for 12 months. And I saw meeting after meeting stacked and stacked and stacked with unions and the Communist Party, people calling each other comrade, and finally finding out that people were whispering behind my back, he's bourgeois, he's an enemy of the station. That was enough for me. Back to you, Harry.
Yeah, I read what you wrote. The thing is, most of those people weren't there today, actually. I mean, the whole thing's changed now it's a completely different regime now. And a lot of the things that are happening now, I don't think people even know the word comrade anymore. So, things change. I mean, a lot of the people that I saw there today, the younger generation, they weren't even born when you were at Armidale.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's sort of enough of that. We're probably boring all the others. I just thought I'd mention I spent probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours there.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, began giving me a headache, so I left and went elsewhere. But anyway, look, I'm just interested also in asking, because I was listening to Steve last Saturday night when he was talking about 5G and RF, etc. And if possible, could I ask him a question?
You there, Steve?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Harry.
Yeah, hi, Steve. Yeah, I was very interested in what you were talking about. I have a friend who keeps asking me every time he sees me. He lives at 558 Toorak Road. Next door, he lives next door to 558. This is an old block of flats, and on top of that block of flats is a 5G and 4G cell, Telstra cell, I believe. He lives directly next door, and his bedroom window, when he looks out, he can almost touch the antennas. He's that close, and he says to me, should I move? I'm really worried, and he's made certain complaints, but of course nothing's happened. So every time he sees me, or sometimes he even sends me emails, and he said, what do you think I should do? So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, he could contact the owner of the facility and ask them to give him a copy of the report that is produced for each of the facilities when they build them. There's a public archive, Harry, that he can go to, and he can probably download it himself. If you've got a pen, it's called the Radio Frequency National Site Archive, RFNSA. It's hosted by the Australian Telecommunications organisation, AMTA, Australian Mobile Telecommunications Authority. They're an independent sort of a peak body, if you like, for the telcos. So they host this RFNSA website. If he goes to that website and puts in the address of the facility he's interested in, it'll come up with the details. It'll tell him where the transmitter is, what bands it's on, which telcos are there, and there's there's a link on there, or there will be a link on there, which will be to download what's called the EME environmental report. If he downloads that, that will specify the predicted level of RF energy at the maximum point that it could be measured in a public location, up to 500 metres away from that base station, and it will specify what the predicted level is as a percentage of the exposure standard limit. So if the exposure standard limit is 100%, it'll say this site has a predicted maximum exposure of 15% at a distance of 63 metres away from the base station, and that's the highest field strength that can be expected to be, you'd be subjected to in front of that base station. If there's a special interest location there, i.e. a school or, a public place, a church, or, someone's balcony, which is high and close to the antennas, they'll specify those as separate locations, and they'll provide an exposure limit or a calculated exposure maximum for each of those locations. So get him to go onto the RFNSA website, download that report, Harry, and he should be reassured by that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll let him know. Whether he gets reassured by that, I'm not quite sure.
I just stick a raw chicken out the window, and if it cooks, you're in trouble.
That's right.
Or if it catches COVID.
Hey, I have a question for Jeff, yourself, Chris, and Steve. In my miscreant youth, among other things, I had a Plessy taxi truck radio, which I converted to 168 meg by saving my pocket money and going to Ham Radio Supplies in Elizabeth Street and ordering 39 meg crystals, hoping that they wouldn't add 10.7 and multiply by 4 and get a frequency in the 168 meg range, which they never did. I'm just wondering, in the early 70s, would I have been committing an offence by listening to the constabulary?
That's an interesting question.
I don't think so, Pete.
Oh, that just took the fun out of it.
Well, the police originally were just above the broadcast band. You couldn't expect them to be private there.
As long as you could prove that you weren't using for an illegal purpose or making money out of it or for gain, monetary gain, I think you could get away with it. I remember when I was checking through the paperwork, getting this manually tuned receiver back, that they'd written down there that I had deliberately meddled with the tuning cord and everything so that I couldn't tune off 168 megs. Well, that was a lot of rubbish, because I used to tune right down to 146 megs to listen to the early repeater, and I'd come right up through the marine band. I used to listen to Yellow Cabs when they were on about 166 megs, and I'd even go right up to 174 where they used to run the Commonwealth cars. I think if anything it was just overuse, and it just seemed to slip in that one spot, Peter, 168 megs.
Yeah, I had one nerve-wracking moment there one night. I actually made myself a little handheld portable kit. Actually, it was just the receiver board off another one of those Plessy taxi truck radios. It wasn't exactly small, wasn't subtle. It was powered by D-cell batteries, so it was a big cumbersome thing. And I'm walking along the street one evening very, very late or early hours of the morning listening to it, and a carload of detectives rocked up, wound the window down and said, "Hey, what are you up to?" And of course the radio started squawking. It was me trying to not make it obvious that I was reaching for a volume to control to turn it down. But I think because their radio was squawking, they couldn't tell it was coming from mine. So, yeah, that was a close call.
I can remember a mate of mine, Noel, down in Black Rock. He had a shortwave receiver. I've never forgotten this. Now, he tuned to 10.7 and he could hear radiated signals from a two-way radio somewhere in that area on 10.7. It was distorted, or did he slope detect it? And so the radio, probably through design or anything, radiated a lot on 10.7. It was one of the IF frequencies.
Okay.
It's got you stumped, hasn't it?
I can't imagine that if the police were transmitting on with completely unscrambled audio, likewise the fire brigade, that there would have been any problem in listening to it. The problem was, I think, did they call it the Official Secrets Act? It was specified in the old Wireless Telegraphy Act that divulging anything you had heard on non-broadcast frequencies was illegal. That was, you had to sign something. Some elder friends of mine doing the ham ticket, the AOCP in the 60s, had to sign some pro forma declaring that they would not make public any transmissions that they heard on HF. I don't know when that stopped. It could have stopped with the new Radio Communications Act, which I think was 1996. I'm not sure about that.
Yes, you could be right. One other thing, Chris, I've photocopied a couple of pages out of a 1937 American magazine, and it's got a great list of police transmitters, experimental stations, television and everything that operated between the end of the broadcast band, 1600, and went as high as 2.5 megacycles.
Right, yeah.
And it's a great list of all these headquarters that transmitted on those shortwave frequencies at various power limits.
Yeah.
I can only presume that the vehicles, like our, at the time, transmitted back on VHF, probably back in the 30 meg range, AM, like here in Melbourne they transmitted on 31.5 megacycles. Mr. Hertz hadn't had it showing then, so it was cycles, AM. So that's of interest. So that's included with these two books.
Yeah, I think Dave, 3ASC, picked up either a police or fire brigade mobile radio from that period, and it is, as you say, high VHF or high HF or low VHF. And interestingly, with that television mentioned there, pre-war, from about 1930 to about the war, there was an allocation between 2 megs and 2.15, I think, that was allocated to, would you believe, television video. Because with the scanning disc, scanning typically 60 lines per picture, so it's 3,600 pixels per image. Is enough for a fuzzy photograph of head and shoulders, I suppose. At 16 frames a second, you had about 50, maybe 60 kilohertz to play with, which was enough for a low definition television picture. When they went to higher definitions, of course, they had to go to VHF 5 meters or shorter. But at that stage, they were fricking about with mechanical scanning and limited definition, and 2.1 megs was sufficient to get them out of the way. There was one station in Australia that was licensed for that frequency, and that was a station in Brisbane, God, I'll think of it in a minute. It's 2 letters. 4CM, I think it was. And they were running experimental television pre-war. A lot of experimental television going on, particularly with the amateurs, when simple equipment was all that was necessary. And God knows Ross Hull cashed his chips in, fiddling about with high-voltage CRTs.
Found that out, didn't he, when he put his hand under the bench?
Mm.
Zappo, that was the hand of Ross.
Yeah, you have an earthed pair of headphones and 4kV on a CRT, and you reach around under the bench in the dim light where you're looking at the screen, you know, which is dim enough. Well, kabang!
I didn't know that about Ross Hull.
Yeah, he was only in, I think, his 30s when he died. But he was in America. He was experimenting with television, with CRTs, and that carried him off. I mean, I've done a lot of experimentation with CRTs before being able to do the same thing with software. And typically what you would do is to float the cathode and the control grid at a negative 1 or 2 kilovolts, so that the deflection plates can be down near earth potential, which you're driving from the anodes of tubes. And so that the contrast control and the brightness control pots are all floating at -2 kV. And once or twice...
Nothing like that at all, Chris, but my dad made a TV set.
Yep.
Well, actually, he put together a very nice record player as well, which had a varnished wooden case.
Mm.
No such luxury was ever made for the television set that had an outer skeleton metal frame, which allowed for easy access by curious 6-year-old fingers. And I shall never forget the jolt I got from coming in contact with the picture tube's earth
You're
wire.
lucky to be alive, mate.
It was significant. I've never forgotten it.
Oh, have you ever... Sorry, go ahead.
My experimentation consisted of a Claude Neon high voltage transformer with a couple of modified wire coat hangers into a Jacob's ladder.
Yep. You wanted to make a film featuring Bela Lugosi or something.
It's alive! It's alive! And I, being an electrical apprentice at the time, I was very well aware of earth situation and everything. I made sure that everything was turned off whilst I was adjusting the Jacob's ladder, and I'd stand back and then flick the switch on the power point. Zerp, zerp, up she go. But I never ever got shocked.
You're very lucky. Apparently it's now illegal to actually publish circuits where people can actually lose their lives. You could be sued.
The kid over the back, Bob, who went on to spend most of his working life with the RACV as their radio maintenance man, he got a car spark coil, put a buzzer in series with the primary and a Morse key and a long wire, probably the crystal set radio antenna, interfered with everything from 0 to wherever using this spark coil thing, zap, zap, zap. I think he had 2 brass doorknobs. One went to the antenna and one went to earth, so you could adjust it to get the spark across the brass doorknobs.
And then your main tuned circuit would have been the antenna and the earth.
That would have affected everything from 0 to wherever in the neighbourhood. It didn't last very long.
When CB was being popularised, before it was legalised, I heard of one bloke that fitted a Tesla coil to the front of his car, and if there was CB as he didn't like, he'd get really close to the car, fire up the Tesla coil when he was passing the car, so this big 6-foot spark would go zap across to the car radio antenna, and that usually killed the CB. He's very lucky not to get done for things like that.
I've heard of them I've seen it actually done striking a fluorescent tube on a helical antenna.
Yes, yes. Anyway, look, people, it's nearly 20 minutes to 1. I really better start pulling the plug. Thank you very much for your company. It's been a very successful evening, and I hope we have a similar evening next Sunday. In the meantime, there'll be, I presume we'll be just on our own without the 160-metre relay tomorrow night. But this has been VK3AML in Burwood East, with the group 3ACZ, 3VJS, 3HFX, 3ZH, and ZH has been providing the 160-metre relay. Do you have any final comments, Steve?
No, Chris, sorry, I've been a little bit absent the last 15 minutes or so. I've been advised by some friends of ours who we're travelling with in 2 weeks' time. We're going on a cruise up to the South Pacific, and I got a text saying at 5 past midnight, can you jump in to the Carnival website and select a departure time where we all get together and get on the ship on Sunday, because check-ins open at midnight on Saturday night. You've got to do it now, otherwise we won't be able to. So I've been faffing about for the last 15 minutes, putting in all sorts of irrelevant and superfluous details into this website to try and secure a booking time.
Best of luck with it anyway,
which
Steve.
I've just done. Thank you, Chris, for running
thanks again for a relay too.
Tonight, and my pleasure running the relay. Cheers, everybody.
Okay. Any final comments, Harry, if you're still with us? I think Harry's gone. Jeff, VK3VJS?
It's been very, very enjoyable tonight. So I'm just about all QSR out. From now on, for another week, I'll be listening. Unless something pertinent comes up that I can get out of my bookcase over there, or old Hollywood, or actors, or films, or something, I'll be very, very quiet, Chris. So all the best. So good morning to Steve, Harry, if you can hear us, Chris and Peter. This is VK3VJS in the heart of Springvale. It also goes by another name, but we won't mention that. But no, I always say that if it wasn't for the Enterprise Hostel on the corner of Westall Road and Osborne Avenue, where all the boat people ended up, Springvale would probably be dead by now, or a long time ago, but they've certainly rejuvenated Springvale.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, all.
All the best, Jeff. And you can tie the ribbons, Peter.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jeff, for joining us. Harry and Steve especially. Thanks, Chris, for cross-banding. Thank you, Steve, for cross-banding. Always fun to hear that really good signal coming out on 160. And it certainly beats what I can put out on Tuesday nights for the Harvest Net. As I said earlier, Chris, the 4th of July is a difficult day for me because of a loved one's birthday. These are the things you must grin and bear. But all the better to have spent the time with you guys, so I'm very, very grateful. Cheers to all, and look forward to tomorrow night. Thanks, Chris. Good night to all. VK3AML. This has been VK3ACZ.
Okay, any other takers before we close? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, this is VK3AML, now concluding crossband. I've been transmitting on 147.475. The others have been on 439.225. We've been working full duplex back and forth. And in accordance with the regulations, I will listen on 147.475 briefly before pulling the big switch. VK3AML now dropping off 147.475.
Your hearty rendition of America, the wonderful or the beautiful. Good morning.
VK3AML, VK3AZI.
VK3AZI, VK3AML.
It's VK3AZI, Oscar Zulu, India. Sorry, I was trying to break in before because I was listening on the side, and then I think you're talking to someone else. You weren't talking to me, is that right?
Oh, no, absolutely not you, no.
I apologise. because I made a call. So what have I done wrong? I was just going to say, you were just saying good night, and I was just going to say hi. And I was just listening to the conversation for the last probably 20 minutes after getting my antenna and everything set up on my radio. And so yeah, I just thought I'd say hello and good night as well. Because you're booming into me. My name's Stephen, and I'm from Hallam, VK3AZI.
Oh, no worries, Steve. 3AZI, 3AML. We've been working crossband, and if you want to take note, all the others are on 439.225. Not all of them can hear each other, so I feed each of them through a mixer with my own microphone. I'm listening on headphones to stop the feedback. It's called crossband duplex. Dave, VK3ASE, operated in that fashion for, God knows, 40 years, and he's stopped it, and I've decided to start it up again. VK3OZI, back to you, VK3AML.
Yeah, VK3AML, VK3OZI. Yeah, I turned the squelch down a little bit because he's barely moving my meter, and I've got the attenuation and stuff on because you guys are all booming in. I was wondering how you were doing it because I could hear you sort of talking and them talking at the same time. I thought, well, it's full duplex, but I wasn't sure exactly how it was working. And that frequency was what, the 439.225, wasn't it?
That's correct, you got it.
Okay, and you just bag on here like on a Sunday night, do you? Oh, well, sorry, Sunday morning.
Now, it's there's some of us are on most nights. I'm on most nights, but the big night is Saturday night where we all get together on here.
VK3AML, yeah, I thought you were talking to me. What have I done? Oh, never mind. I don't talk very much on the radio. I usually just listen. I like mucking around with them and that sort of stuff, but yeah, I don't talk that often. I'm usually too busy or too tired after working. So tonight I put my antenna back on my TS2000, and I'm just skipping through the band, just looking for somewhere where I could transmit, finding a clear frequency, and usually I have all the repeaters programmed into my other radio, which sort of just scans through it, and I just gas bag on there sometimes and talk on my club radio, which is Gippsland Gate repeater in Cranbourne. So yeah, I just usually talk on that if I'm talking on anything. And then I do the laundry net sometimes because I'm friends with Mike. Anyway, yeah, so I was just cruising the band, just moving up and down, looking for a bit of clear space, and I heard you guys booming in, so yeah, so I started listening. Anyway, I'm going to go to bed because it's late, and yeah, it's late. So yeah, VK3, VK3 AML.
No worries, Steve. 3AML. Sorry, 3OZI, VK3AML. Yeah, people take some time to get used to crossbanding, but a lot of the rigs can do it. They have dual VFO and can do it if the transceiver is set up correctly. I'm using a separate receiver and transmitter here, and a diplexer. Some types of diplexers allow you, if you're receiving on 70 centimetres and transmitting on 2, the diplexer allows you to transmit and receive from the same antenna at the same time, which is what I'm doing. And the receiver I'm using to relay everybody is wait for it, a Baofeng UV5R Mini. Not exactly the most exotic receiver under the sun. Back to you.
Oh dear, oh dear. Yes. I can listen, and I don't think I can do exactly what you can do, but I use the duplex single antenna, 70 centimetres, 2 metres into the one radio, which is the TS2000, which can transmit on one frequency and listen on the other. It's got 2 tuners in it, I believe. So I can do a little bit of stuff like that, but I don't think I can do it to the sophistication that you can. Back to you.
Well, it doesn't take that much sophistication. Just a mixer helps, and an audio peak limiter helps. But apart from that, nothing's terribly exotic here. Look, it's 10 minutes to 1. I really have to go, but if you care to call in on 439-225 next Saturday, or when you hear us doing this sort of stuff on here, you're always very welcome, and give duplex a try. It's an interesting way of operating, and it tends to... how can I put it? It lubricates the flow of conversation. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, cool. Great. This will be my final. Yeah, I do it with a friend of mine who's up the road. He's got the same radio as me, so yeah, we do it a little bit. We can't get HF because we're too close, and our antennas are pointing sort of in the wrong direction. So yeah, we can only really do it through 2 metres or 70 centimetres, and we have our little home channel. I think I can't even remember what it is. I'd have to have a look it up. Anyway, doesn't matter. Okay. 73s, and I'll have a listen on this on 439-225, and I can listen on this one at the same time. So anyway, nice chat. VK3AML 73.
No worries. You're 20 over 9 into Burwood East, so we must have a very good path. All the best.
Yeah, good night.
Chris, just quickly, I often heard a carrier under the 2 metre signal. I don't know how he wanted to pause when there wasn't one for 2 hours. Anyway, cheers, Chris.
Some people just don't get it. All the best, Peter.
Cheers, Chris. Yeah, headache material. Good night.